Hey everyone, today we're talking about what happens when Paul meets Timothy. Paul reached Derbe and then Lystra, where there was a disciple named Timothy. He was the son of a believing Jewish woman and a Greek father. The brothers and sisters in Lystra and Iconium spoke well of him. Paul wanted to take Timothy with him, so he circumcised him. This is because the Jews who lived in those areas, but they all knew Timothy's father was Greek. As Paul and his companions traveled through the cities, they instructed Gentile believers to keep the regulations put in place by the apostles and elders in Jerusalem. So the churches were strengthened in their faith, and every day their numbers flourished. So Paul meets Timothy, brings him along, and he has him circumcised. I thought Paul didn't care about the law of Moses, right? Wasn't it nailed to the cross? Didn't Paul live in guilt over his inability to follow this law until he found the freedom that comes in Christ? Well, no, to both of those questions. Both of those are distortions of Paul's actual theology and the things that he writes in his letters. Paul still identifies as Jewish, and that influences his mission strongly, which is why, unfortunately, for Timothy, he needs to be circumcised because he is Jewish. He doesn't do this, though, for Timothy's salvation, right? That's where Paul is different from that group that was arguing for circumcision back in Acts 15. They said, if you're not circumcised, you're not saved. Paul doesn't believe that, but that doesn't mean that there's no place for something like circumcision. Timothy is saved through faith in Christ, but identity markers still matter. The law was never what saved the Jewish people. That's actually not what most of them thought. That's, again, another distortion by Christians. The law was a way to identify as the people who God had already saved and made his own. And so even though as Paul is moving into Gentile territory, he's not given up on his own Jewish people. Every city he goes to, his starting place is a synagogue because Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. It's a message that starts there and then expands and includes Gentiles. Paul never forgets the Jewish roots of the Christian story. And that may seem a little hard for Timothy here, but it's important that we don't forget those roots either, because way worse things happen historically when Christians have denied the Jewish part of our story. It doesn't mean we need to follow these identity markers, but it does mean we need to know who God has always been working through and what God is doing through Christ is a continuation of the story that God started in the beginning.